Hello everyone, good evening, welcome to Real Love Guitars, and here we have Drew's Epiphone Explorer. I believe this is brand new, and it's here for pickup changes, so we've got some interesting Damasios to fit, PAF anniversary, and a super distortion. We've got some gold speed dial knobs, we've got a cream scratch plate, we've got a replacement bridge, and we've got some cream surrounds, pickguard, pickup rings. Okay, so I've had a chance to play this guitar earlier today for about half an hour, and I really liked it. It was great sounding, great to play. You know, I have to say, pretty nice. Now, what I'm going to do, as always, I'm going to do a couple of things. So first one is we're going to audition one of these here thingies. Now, these have a slight spread on them, but I think they'll suit the strings just about. They're not perfectly matched for the Gibson. Sorry, they're more matched for the Gibson headstock. They're not quite perfectly matched for the Explorer, but I think it will work okay. So I'm going to, I've got a big long list there. So to start out with, first thing I'm going to do is double check the three-way switch. I did some checks with it today and I didn't find any problems with it. What I did notice is this thing has two volumes and a tone. Now that means quite often that if this one's down, you can often get into a situation with your thingy switch where it cuts out because one of these two are connected to each other, so if one's down it kills the other one no matter where it's set. So you have to kind of keep that in mind, because I think that can often give you the impression that there's a pickup missing. So you have to remember that being two volumes here, that they are interlinked. So we'll keep an eye on that, but I'll just do a quick little double check. Then what I'll do is we'll replace the nut. We could fit the new bridge, might as well. Replace the nut, we'll set the last fret action, neck relief, first fret action, and get it ready as if I was just going to level it out, and then we'll test the notes on there. So having played it, it played really well, surprisingly well so far. And what I can see, and I'll just give you a close-up view, if I can get this thing to stay in place without rattling or moving around. If I have a real close-up on this, can you see how much flattening there is on the edge of that fret? That's been leveled quite heavily, right? And I'm sure the same will apply. Well, I can see the same does apply. If I can just back off a bit. Same does apply right there. That's been leveled. And I guess if we just sort of scoot along, leveled at the edge, leveled, not so much, but a bit more perhaps, not so much. Bit jagged with the old file there. Not much, not so much, not much. So you can see that there is some leveling that's been done, particularly down this end, and that's only on one side, so I'm not really entirely sure about the other side. The other side doesn't look so much. So maybe they had a bit of good old-fashioned fret slap on the, where's my finger there, on the bass side, and they sort of cured it a bit with some leveling, but it's definitely been done. So, you know, good old Epiphone, done it in the factory by the looks of it. Now whether that will still, you know, play okay at the action that I'll set is another thing. So we're going to do that first, and it might be a bit sort of here and there, and I might even finish off the job tomorrow because yeah, I need to get to the grocery supermarket place, the exciting thrill that we call Morrison's, somewhere like that. So I kind of need to get there before it shuts tonight. And of course I have some more time tomorrow, which I can do. Currently I'm also heating up the world in there as well, because I'm just going to shoot the last of my that stuff, nitro. So I may, Drew, I may disappear off and do some spraying, and I guess I can take you with me. It might not be interesting in respect of your guitar, but it it'll give me something to do, and then I'll have to keep the mask on for a while. So let's do the first things first. Let's do the test of the three-way toggle, and for those purposes I bring up my filthy old Roland, which still does great service, the old Roland amp. We'll also double check the jack as well. So power on, clean tones, what's this, gain, lowish, volume, delays off, flanger off, treble mid. Okay, so there's a sort of an example. So neck, we're in the middle position here, neck is full up, bridge is full up. Turn the bridge off and oh my goodness, nothing's happening with the neck. Now when they're switched separately, they don't interact with each other, so obviously the neck works. It doesn't really matter what this one's doing, but when they're together, this one kills that one, and this one. That's interesting. Yeah, the neck one kills that one, and that one kills that one. So they both interact, right? So that may be, you know, you may have had the thing set in the middle like that. You go, look, bridge, neck, nothing. But like I say, I don't see any, feel any cutout issues, except there we have nothing, even though the bridge is up, because they're interrelated. Okay, so for all intents and purposes, I'm kind of happy that that's working. I've been caught out myself many times in that way, thinking something's not right, and then you realise the interdependence or interrelationship of the two volumes makes a can give you that impression. Right, so next stage, we will get ready to remove the nut. Oh, the other thing I did notice in playing this earlier on is the first thing I noticed is that it's got no relief at all in the neck, and in fact it's probably very slightly back bowed, which means that there's some notes down here which are struggling to play. Doink. So that's a good one to take care of straight away. So we'll do a little bit of an adjust with these strings currently on it. So whether or not it plays all notes at the action I'm wanting to set is obviously going to be revealed or discovered at the point where I've set the action. So right now I won't necessarily know. So I'm going to get me the, not very good view I'm afraid. I'm just going to see what size thing we got here. Right, a little bit of slack. I'm going to go a little bit more slack. Let's see what's on the other side of slack. We've actually got a bit of positive tension. Okay, because you've got to remember these are 8s on here, so they're going to be a little bit light on the loading. It's a tiny bit of space now, only the tiniest, crumbliest, flakiest chocolate. So I'm going to put a tiny fraction more in the positive counterclockwise, or the positive relief direction. I'm positively relieved. Okay, so that's good at that end. Now I'm going to crudely, gently but crudely, set the action down this end nice and low, which I know Drew wants me to do. Now this is fairly high, well, reasonably high at the moment. I don't really need to put the roller bridge on just yet. I can save that for now. So we have just on 1.5 there, and we have fraction up there. So I'm just going to take these those down a tiny bit, and then my next task is to find out how all the notes play. Well, we've got those back, which is good. So we've got, I think we will have 13, 14 and 15. I will guess that 14 and 15 are low frets. I'll make a note of this. 14, 15 being low. And the reason for that is that they're choking out just after that. And it's often the low frets that cause the other ones to choke out, of the neck, the bends to choke out on the E, because you're pushing the string across the fret and slightly uphill. And the anchor points here are down lower when you look at them cross section. I did a video about this once, and I tried to explain it on Facebook the other day in words, and it was quite a challenge. But anyway, I think I did explain it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take off or slack off these ear strings for a minute. And then I'm going to, I like these tuners, they're little small button quality looking things. Are they Grovers? Probably are. Okay, so this is, I don't know, this is either it's Tusk or it's new bone. It looks Tusky to me. So I'm going for the adjustable because that's what Drew requested. So let's see. Now this one, I'm just going to do a quick look from the side. This one's well fitted, but it's not sprayed in place with the finish, which is one of the main things I have to watch out for. So this one should, without any major kerfuffle, undo like that. Any more force needed than that, and you might find yourself in a situation where it's been glued into place by the way the finish has been applied. Okay, so that's a lovely straight up fit. What I don't know is whether I probably might need to still take a little bit down off the base, but let's just see this and how it sits for a minute. And if we do need to take a bit off the base, I'll take a bit off now. I haven't, what's the word, glued it down or anything. I'm going to do up the G and the D first to hold the nut in place. Woo. And then B. Okay, well this is nearly there. I've got this, I don't think this is sticking up at all at the moment, so it's kind of at its lowest. So I think I'll take a tiny bit off. And then I'll also cut a little piece of brass strip to go in there. So while we're using the old sacrificial strings, it's fine to undo and do up, because this is, the wear and tear is going into those strings, not into the good set that will fit at the end. Okay, so all looking good. Everything's looking good in there. I don't really need to do any adjustment in there, which is pretty good. So I'm going to take down the base of this just a tiny bit. What I prefer, if possible, is to start with the strings with the nut kind of fully wound down, or let's say the grub screws out and not lifting, so slack probably. I like to start then with the strings sitting on the first fret. That's the ideal start point. So I'm taking a little bit of extra material off so we can go there. To be honest, it doesn't have to be exactly seated on the first fret, as long as it's below the normal 0.3, and I did one yesterday where it ended up sitting at about 0.15 of a mil, so that's about half the normal first fret action, which I thought was perfectly fine, and then obviously the idea is you go up from there to your preference. Right, so I'm just going to trim any stuff off the edge there, keep it tidy. Watched a great old film yesterday, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original one with I've forgotten his name already, but famous, well, kind of famous actor. He had a I think he had a career at that point, and then I think he dropped out of the limelight a bit, and then he came back years later and did more as an older man. And I've completely forgotten what he was called, but anyway, some of you will remember the film, and it's great, really well done. And I do remember seeing the Donald Sutherland remake, and that was pretty scary as well. I think it had more chill to it, but that's, of course, 50s films. Even when I first saw it in the 70s, that black and white film was a little bit cheesy, to say the least. So it didn't reach the sort of levels of being scaredy. Okay, so I'm looking at the travel of the strings through there. That's absolutely fine. It does a little tiny movement, but nothing that will cause it any issues. So that's practically sitting on there. So I'll call that my position for now. Of course, having checked all that, I suppose it would probably make sense if I put it on there now. Let's do that, since it saves toing and froing with all the strings. We'll do them one more time after this. So what I'm just getting done at this stage is the basic, what I call, or I've come to call, the geometric setup. And it's the bit where I just make sure the basic shape of the thing works. Let me just do the other bit that I nearly forgot. So the little metal insert. So I'm going to drink a glass of my coffee. We get the digital caliper. We get a 3mm, just under 3mm thing, and then we're going to cut or mark 3mm strip along there, and then cut that. It doesn't have to be precise, but it's just no more than, so it's got to be under 3. And once I've done it, thank you, what I'll do is I'll lay this, I'll just trim it a little bit, and then I'll lay it inside the floor of the adjustable nut. And this just gives it a little bit of something to stand on, which has got a bit more longevity. So I'm going to keep a close eye on which bit is which, first of all. I'm going to mark up this. Yeah, it was a fun old film. I really, it stretches the imagination at times. Like, I sort of get it. All right, there are these fabulous pods that whose mission is to turn into you while you sleep, but it takes over your body only when you sleep, and the mechanism by which it somehow absorbs your personality is of course unknown. And there was a few bits that really didn't make sense. Like I forgot, Miles was the hero. Miles, when Miles was when it first found, what was her name? Becky's first found Becky's pod becoming her. I don't think he killed it So then there was suddenly another one in his own greenhouse. So there's one in her below her stairs to begin with, and then a bit later on, he we didn't see him do anything to it, but then that one sort of disappeared, and then we were kind of in his greenhouse. They were sort of having a barbecue while this terrible thing was going on, and they discovered the alien pod things there. And then there was Becky getting recreated in his greenhouse potting shed, which was a bit weird because last time she was down in her dad's basement. So I don't know whether somebody had snuck her across there and dumped her, but so that didn't really make a lot of sense. And anyway, whatever. And yeah, so the kind of key missing bit was the how the hell did it transfer? How did it steal your personality? Because apparently it only took a split second to nick your personality, but there was an earlier time where she'd fallen asleep and it hadn't managed to nick her personality in that short time she'd been asleep. So it seemed to be a bit inconsistent how long it needed to pinch your human soul. Anyway, but it was great. What was his name? Oh, bloody hell. Kevin McDonald, Kevin something. Kevin. I keep thinking of Donald Sutherland. It wasn't Donald Sutherland. Kevin Sullivan. Something. No, it wasn't. Oh, anyway. Kevin McNamara. No. Anyway, it was a good old film. Just one of those ones when you're tired and you need a bit of downtime on a dull afternoon or something. You think, that's perfect. Just arrived at the right moment. And they just turn up on YouTube, these films. No idea who actually puts them up, or why they don't get taken down for copyright or whatever. But kind of glad they don't, because I get my drizzly afternoon B-movie. Now we've got it right down low, so now I'm going to do the adjusting upwards to give it a little bit of height. So we have the control, and that sinks the grub screws nicely into the unit. Okay, I'll go from there. So the rule of thumb with the adjustable nut, have it as low as your playing style allows. Okay, so there's our marked up frets, our fitted nut, looking quite good. Yeah. The Donald, no, not Donald Sutherland. Kevin, somebody. Never mind, it's not important. I do remember the Donald Sutherland version where he turns, because in this original version, it's the girl who slips away and becomes one of them, and he's left to alert the world to the danger. And it's got a kind of happy ending in the sense that he's taken seriously because somebody just accidentally gets into a car crash or truck crash, and it was carrying a load of these, get a load of these weird things, and they were the pods. And so suddenly his story made sense, and everybody was calling APBs on all the sheriff's departments all around the county or something. And actually, even though it's a sort of meant to be, thank God they believe him and they're going to take him seriously, you didn't get the feeling that those pods were going to be stoppable, given how fast they'd already colonized the town, and how once the people had been taken on board, the alien life form thing, how difficult it was to stop them or to spot them even, actually. So what did I say? I reckon 14 and 15 are going to show up as low on this. So I can see a couple of low spots already. 4 is low. Okay, I was right. So cutting low-ish, higher, 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 down a bit, down a bit, down a bit. 15 completely low. So it's 15 that's low, 14 is low, 15 is very low. I don't know if you can see this. I shall treat you to the thrill of it. So this is a good thing about this method. See, I told you 15 was low, and that was causing 16 and 17 to choke out when you bend. That's because this one is low, and you can see that it hasn't, well, you can see with the light, you can see it hasn't cut metal at all. So this one is sitting lower. These two are okay, relatively speaking. This one is a little low, and this one's even lower. And that's what this method is brilliant for, because you can really diagnose, if you know, with the experience, you can diagnose what's happening. So the choking on the bend confirmed or suggested either a high fret or a low one. Because there were 2 in the line that were choking, it's not the case with a high fret, so that tends to cause 2 low frets, which are more common than 2 high frets, if you get what I mean. And that's just a piece of, based on time-served experience. So anyway, so what I'm doing at this point is I'm just bringing those either side down so that we can get that 15 bend, and the strings won't be in the way, or they won't hit on the G, what I call the G track, which is where the G sits. So we shall be able to, once I've finished this, we'll be able to bend, have the ultra low action that I've just put on, but also be able to bend it out on that 15th fret. And if I go up to 12, 15. Okay, now we wouldn't expect it to clear up yet because I have to level the G track part of it in order for it to clear up. So I'll do those bends again once we've got past the G track, and you will see that they don't choke out, which is the great thing about this method. Somebody put a comment on a YouTube video the other day saying he kind of wished I had explained a bit more what I was doing throughout the setup, because I'm conscious that often these days I just sort of go into, okay, we've got 15 and 17 is low at this point. Yeah, I'm conscious that I often just go into talking about stream of consciousness without saying, I'm going to level the frets on this electric guitar. Why is that? Because. And I guess it's because out of 800 and some videos, I've said it a trillion times already. And you know, if you're watching or if you're paying attention, you should be able to figure out what I'm doing or why I'm doing what I'm doing from the actions I'm taking. So I said, and the little hint. So I said I'm changing the nut. I'm lowering the last fret playing action. By the way, last fret is where I measure it, but other people measure it at the 12th fret. That's fine by them, fine by me. But yeah, I set the target playing action, and you may have kind of noticed that I set that action regardless of whether the frets are going to like it or not. Now often you don't, you know, when you're first into guitars and you don't know about fret leveling and things like that, you set the action, usually as a youngster, you tend to set the action as low as you can until you start hitting buzz. Oh, by the way, that's the G track, so let's listen to the 15th fret high E bend. 12, 13, 14, 15. There you go. Freed up. Freed up. Yeah, so as a kid you lower the guitar to the point where the strings start buzzing, and then you kind of back off a little bit, and then you leave it at that, and then, you know, whinge a lot about it to your mates whose guitars seem to have a much lower action or whatever. And that's the sort of the life of the newbie guitar player, you know, the level of your playing action is set by, well, you don't even know, you just know it doesn't play below a certain height, and I'm telling you that it's set by the unevenness of your frets, and they're all different. The amount of unevenness tends to be different on each guitar, just depending on, you know, how it was made, or where it was made, or when it was made, who put the frets in on what day. So they're all different, but as a rule, your playing action used to be set by the chance unevenness in your frets. And what I like about this method is that I get to choose what the action is, and I do that from, you know, based on a lot of experience to know what is a totally feasible playing action for a guitar like this. This guitar with the neck mostly out of the body could quite feasibly play with a 1mm, perhaps 1.2mm low E last fret action, and that's very, very low. It's nearly as low as a good SG, and with about 1mm over on the treble side, last fret, high E at the last fret. So the important thing is, certain guitars play with lower actions than others, and my experience has shown me that guitars like this with set necks, where most of the fingerboard is outside of the bulk of the body, they tend to be able to play much lower, or relatively lower action than bolt-on neck guitars, or guitars where the neck goes quite a long way into the body, glued in like a Les Paul. On one side it's got a great big slab of mahogany. Yeah, so I can look at an Explorer, and because of the type of guitar it is, with its neck quite a long way out the body, I would expect this comfortably to go down to 1.2, easily the 1.5, shouldn't be any trouble at all. And also it has quite a flat radius, and I'm not quite sure exactly what the radius is on this, but it looks to be about either 12 or slightly larger. It looks quite flat, but it's probably a 12 if it's a traditional Explorer, I suppose. So with a 12-inch radius, that's very forgiving in terms of bending notes and not getting chokes. So that, plus the fact that it's a neck that's mostly outside of the body, which means that the truss rod can, when you adjust it, it affects the whole of the neck rather than just 2/3 of it. So it's a very good construction for low action. But as I say, you know, straight away from experience, I can tell you that I would be aiming for the 1.5 or slightly below, because it should easily be able to do this. Now, while I'm leveling here, by the way, I'm conscious that I'm now going over the little spots that were leveled on here before, so I'm just sort of working over the top of that. Now, some of you who watch these things will have, some people wonder why I never do a thing called fall away, fall off, fall away. Some schools of setup do this thing where, because on a Les Paul this area here tends to be rigid, a lot of techs tend to literally cut a sort of slope into the frets going backwards, so that they accommodate this. They supposedly accommodate this congested area by creating this fall away to give the frets space. Now, I don't do it because this method doesn't require it. It has a built-in sort of secret quality to it, and I can't be bothered to explain it all here. But believe me, it's taken 8 years of exploration and learning it and getting better at it, and it does what, you know, if I say it does this thing, you can guarantee it does. Yeah, so it takes care of that if there is any humpage at that point. So having leveled my frets, precision leveled them actually, and the reason I say precision leveled is that this method is a little bit more accurate than the standard leveling beam where you make the neck flat and you just scrape the beam, and it's a little bit more accurate than that because this levels with the strings loaded and pulling the neck, so it not only has curvature in the neck, aka relief, but it also has longitudinal compression coming from both ends, so it scrunches the neck in the longitudinal plane as well. So that's a different effect. If you level with the neck flattened out and on the bench with a standard sort of flat beam, you aren't leveling with that compression at play, so that compression will do something to your neck after you load it with strings that you didn't accommodate for when you leveled it, and that actually can make, makes about a 5% difference in accuracy, something like that. So I kind of like it for that reason. It's very accurate, or it's more accurate. But the reason I most like it is because it allows me to stop leveling precisely at the moment where I make the chosen action play. So I don't keep going until I've got an absolute level, i.e. my fret rocker isn't turning up any more clicks. I can have clicks because I only need to make sure that I have got as much leveling as I need to make the chosen action play. I don't need to level underneath that. If there's 1.5 millimeters at the last fret action, I don't need to level all the way underneath that because I'm never going to lower it beyond that. So you kind of get what I mean. Right, I'm just hearing the thing in there which is telling me it's time to go and shoot some stuff. So I think I better just do that. Don't think it'll take long, but maybe I should I? No, I'll just do it. I mean, I can always cut it out, can't I? Yes. I mean, I'm not going to be doing it forever. Get some air through. Okay. Right. So, next piece. Where are we? Okay. Next piece. Let's take this off. Here we go. Let's mark up the frets and crown them. I'll take this mask off shortly. Promise you, I'm just staying alive for the time being until the air clears. So this will be recrowning to round off any flat edges on the levelled frets. Stay there, thank you. Come there, come here, come down. Medium sized over the edge here, sort of like that, medium. Okay. So I'm going to have to buy another can or so of satin. That's okay.
Guy, what was the actor's name? Of course, I can look in at the internet. Oh, what's going on? Money, I like that. You have received money. Oh, that was earlier. Well, okay. Right, what am I looking for? IMDb. Oh. Kevin McCarthy. I got the Kevin bit, and I got McNamara. Oh well, nearly. Yes. I'm noticing these are a bit sharp, so I'm going to do a little bit of extra work on the edges. Yes, bit of extra work. Some extra work. So, excuse me 1 second. It's getting colder in here, thanks to the door and window being open. It's okay. hoe. Put some clean stuff. I'm just going to clean off the pen and the dust at this point. Okay. Stinky smells.
Yuck. It's alright, it's not too bad. Okie dokie. Alright, so let's have a look at the order of events. Precision level, crown, sand and polish next. Which I'd probably do off camera, this bit I usually do, because it's mighty boring. So I will cover up the fret board. I've got to cut a load of new stuff being what I mean by stuff is strips. So I'm just taking that out for now, putting it over there just so I don't run over the top of it, and I'm going to give it a good polish out. And then when I come to sand out these frets in a minute, what I'll do is I'll make sure I go over the ends as well, just to try and soften them up a bit, because I felt they were a bit sharp like. So tonight at least, if not more, but I'll get the precision leveling part done, the nut fitted, and then maybe I'll get the change of the pickups done tonight, maybe not, see how time goes. Yeah, I might do, but then if not, I will complete that tomorrow. So what I'll do is, normally at this stage I would typically do the sanding and then come back when it's time to put new strings on and go from there. But obviously once I've sanded and polished these frets, I'm going to change that out, take the pickups out, change them over, so there'll be a bit more to do before we go anywhere near new strings. But the nice thing about this setup that I do is that let's put you out of the way for a minute. The nice thing is that you saw I took the bridge and the stop bar off, didn't worry about where anything was set, and I can come back later on and put the action on the guitar right back to where it was before, at its lovely low action, and it just the neck goes back into the position I want it to go into, because the frets are all leveled ready to accept that action. So you can strip it all down and the neck is still prepped and ready for the correct action, which is all good. So I think that's what I'll do. I'll take a stop, I'll cut up some of this boring stuff, and then I will see you when I'm going to switch the pickups over, and the pickup ring, and the scratch plate, which I might have to make small alterations to, or I may not. Depends, we shall see when we get there. Kevin MacArthur. Kevin. What a strange 1950s, not 1950s name, really. It's weird, isn't it? Right, let's put some marks in the things I've done. 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 Done that bit. Crown, sand and polish, and then remove strings. I don't think it's in that order, young sir. No. Right, see you in a minute. So here we are, the following day. It's Sunday, and dust, but everything's ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is just basically, to oil the board, fit some strings, stretch them, intonate them with the new bridge, and then that's it. We're done. And with a bit of luck, this will be packaged, packed, you know the word, put in a box and lots of bubble wrap, and got ready for transport. Drew, one thing I did notice on the packing on the way in, there was kind of a bit of room for movement. You protected the up and down above and below the guitar, but there's a little bit of room possible that way. That's what it seemed to me anyway. I could be wrong, but just as a thought, always check that way, and up and down for movement. And a good idea is to, once you think you've packed the guitar in its case, turn the case upside down and listen for the guitar to go clunk. If it does, obviously there's potential for a lot of movement, which can very easily destroy three-way toggle switches and stuff like that, and I've had that happen in the past. So don't be caught out that way. And it's what I kind of realised when I saw that happen. It was in fact a customer who had bought the guitar from an eBay seller and then sent it on to me. It's I'm looking on the edges. There's quite a bit of, I don't know if it's fretwork or file work on the edge of this fingerboard. So I don't know whether somebody's done, not where I've done the edges of the frets, but there's some kind of rounding off feel done here. I don't know whether that's in the factory, if this is a new guitar or what, but it's a little bit rough looking on the edge. I don't know, maybe it's what they call rounding the edge over or something. Doesn't look perfectly right to me, but anyway. So we've got the replacement bridge, or the spare bridge now, which I'll go back in the box in a minute, and then we've got the 8 gauge. Now, I will say to you two things about this guitar. Well, one about the switch. This switch has to sit slightly off the vertical in order to fit in here. It doesn't fit in this cavity if it's dead 190 degrees to the center line. So it's gone in just slightly sideways because it just doesn't fit. The front part of the switch has got to be pointing that way on that angle, which is where it is. So it's going 90 degrees to this angle here. If you try and do it any other way, if you try and turn the switch this way, it won't fit in here, and you have to chisel out a whole chunk of body, which I'm not prepared to do. Just thought I'd let you know. It's just one of those weird little things. Now, a black glossy guitar is an absolute pig to keep clean, so I will not wipe it with anything now since I've already done that, but when I get home and before I pack it, I will give it a home dust down, because home is, believe it or not, less dusty than in here. Anyway, so it's a Sunday and it's actually quite nice out there. It's greyish, but it's not cold. Just been into the Morrison's, which I didn't do last night, so I did it today, and then I'm going to go home and put my feet up for a couple of hours of a Sunday afternoon. And tonight's job is I'm going to get both of Florida Tim's guitars from the spare room where they're hanging up. Going to get them down and check them over, double check the tuning, the intonation and everything, make sure I'm happy with them, and then they're going in their gig bags, which will then be ready for Tim to pick up when his wife and he come down to our neck of the woods. He'll take them away with him, and they will take them back to the US on board the cruise ship, which is Absolutely brilliant way to do it. I tell you what, I could like nothing more right now than to sod off on a cruise to the Caribbean, or at worst, I don't mean this in a bad way, Florida. The Caribbean, because that's where I was born, and I have a little dream of going back to Trinidad via the ocean one day, because that's how my mum and my brother and I used to go backwards and forwards a couple of times in the 60s between England and, or Britain and Trinidad. So I have a very kind of old formative memory of that experience. I've done this thing where yet again I've lost the cutters. I don't know what is going on. Side cutters, they've gone somewhere, they've been hung up somewhere else, and I can't find them. I will find them, they will come back to me. Meanwhilst, I'll use the chunky ones. Yeah, so that would be a thing I'd love to do. I did do a cruise. The only sort of, no, that's not true. I did one years ago when I was much younger. But I did a cruise a few years ago. I was still working in the London corporate world, and I'd had the thing about that life is that I worked all day, long days in the office in London, and then I stayed with my one of my directors at his place. And so the experience for me of going to London was I never really had any space or time to myself during the day, in the evenings, and then I'd come home and I'd get kind of, we're in a very small house with Claire, myself, and a teenage son, a stepson at the time, who was not an easy, still isn't an easy individual to live with at times. But so I remember feeling very much like I needed a break, and so one winter I just said, "Look, I'm just going to get this cheap cruise that was offered." I don't know if it was Queen Elizabeth, the Cunard. Anyway, it was going from Southampton to Hamburg, and the weather was freezing, and it was grey and miserable. There was nothing romantic or lovely about it at all, except that it was cheap. And I thought, do you know what I could do with? I think it was 6 days in total. I thought I could do with 6 days upon the road. No, 6 days upon the sea, doing nothing but eating and sleeping. So I booked this cruise, and I quite slightly uncomfortably self-conscious. I don't know. Not like me to put my sort of casual, smart blazer and trousers into a bag, because that's what you're supposed to wear when you go on these cruises. It's all a bit weirdly formal. Well, yeah, not formal to push people, but formal to people like me who wouldn't normally do that. Anyway, so I took my casual smarts and got a train one day up to Southampton and got on this huge, great thing. And people since have asked me, did I enjoy it? And well, I'll come back to that. But so what I did was get on this thing, get down to a cabin, no windows, fine. You know, it was a cheap seats. Got in this little warm cabin. I took my Taylor baby with me, so I could play some guitar in my cabin at my leisure, and just sort of got settled in. And then I remember going up on top. I've always, because of my experiences travelling on these oil tankers from Trinidad to the UK when I was little, I always loved the sea and big ships and, you know, throbbing engines and the smell of diesel and all of that stuff. So I was in my element. So I was up on deck on this ship on this grey, blustery day, and the ship sort of got ready, and as night was falling, it sort of shuddered its way out of Southampton dock, and off we went. And after that, really, I mean, you know, it was just a couple of days on the open sea, up the English Channel, along the top of Belgium or wherever it is, France, northern France, Belgium, and off round to the German port of Hamburg, which I knew at the time was, of course, the place of the Beatles' kind of first musical success and so on. But I never kind of got into. When I got there, I never went in and did any of those historical retracing things down to the Reaper barn or whatever. But anyway, so it was a very, once the ship got going and you go back inside into the warmth and you go down to your little cabin and then you think, right, where should I go for food? And everything's warm and glowy and cozy, and everyone's kind of pottering about trying to figure out the way around the ship. So I remember finding I didn't want to go to one of these formal things all the time to eat, so I gave those fancy restaurants a miss. But there were some very nice, what they call them, buffet style restaurants to go and eat and drink at. So I did that, and it was very nice and relaxing. And so I spent a bit of time there getting fed and watered, and then just walked around the ship and sort of took in what this weird experience was of being on a cruise ship and the kinds of people and the weird sort of life on board. And then that sort of dragged out over a couple of days, and it was very slow paced and obviously and peaceful. And there was nothing really to do. Oh, there was a show in the big theatre and stuff like that, and that was a Beatles tribute band actually, which was great. But generally speaking, it was just very plodding and, dare I say it, relaxing. Despite the sort of semi-formality of the dress code and those kinds of things, you couldn't slob around the whole place in your jeans and stuff, because people had made an effort to come out and wear their casual smarts. So anyway, so a couple of days after taking off, we got into Hamburg, and then it was a case of just getting on a little bus thing and tootling off into the city, whereupon I found myself in the museum and spent a few hours in there, and then walked back to the ship, or to the port dock thing, cruise ship dock, and went through that nice nighttime experience of the ship leaving dock again. And then heading out all the way up this big river estuary out to Channel, or North Sea, and then to the Channel. And it was interesting. And then a couple of days back, grey, fairly, calm to me. I'm used to rough seas anyway, from sailing and from being in big ships in my childhood. But it was just very pleasant, sort of thundering, throbbing thing, and you could sit in the library and read, and you could walk about, and there were loads of little cocktail bars and stuff that not my sort of thing, but it was nice to sit and listen to somebody tinkling on the kind of cocktail jazz piano or whatever. Lots of nice ambience and stuff, and then back, and the only traumatic thing was that my toilet blocked. On the last day. I thought it was going to overflow into the cabin, and I had to sort of call somebody and say, the toilet's broken. That is as low as a thingamy. Anyway, so the point of the story was, yeah, people said, did you enjoy it? Was it good? And it was a weird experience. And that's a little bit loose. Let's just check that in a minute. If I'm honest, the answer was not exactly. In other words, did I like it? Not exactly. It's not my favourite thing to do. But another level, I absolutely did, because I realised I was so relaxed. That's long. Yeah, I realised it was so relaxing. And, well, actually that was worth so much that I couldn't fault it. And I had a sort of very strong feeling of, in a future time when I come to write a book or something, I could really handle going on a long cruise. And I know that when we got to Southampton again, time to get off, and there were people who were staying on board. They got on in Hamburg, and they were due to sail down to the Caribbean. And you could, I think they were either Caribbean or New York first, and then on to the Caribbean or something like that. It was a massive old cruise, and I actually felt jealous, thinking, no, I don't want to get off. I want to be doing that. So it must have been good in its way. So I am very happy for Tim and his wife to be able to enjoy a long, slow trip home through the changing weathers into the lovely Florida climate post-hurricane. We're pretty much done there. Yeah. Lovely. I'm not going to stretch these 8s too much, because 8s have a strange tendency of breaking, and I can really do without that, since I don't have any more spare sets of 8s. So I'm not going to bust the darn things. I'll leave that bit to Drew to do. So I've just tightened up the screws holding the thingy in place, and that's fine. Everything's good. Okay, this is sitting up. Just noticed. So I'm going to undo this a minute, sit it down, and push it back in. Yes, so I'd be very envious of Tim going home that way, and of course he'll be going home with his 2 Harley Bentons with him, so we'll have time to sit out on the deck as the weather gets nicer, as they get over into the southern Atlantic down towards the Caribbean Sea, and he'll be able to strum his guitars as they, not Caribbean, wherever, what's it, Florida, it's the Atlantic still, isn't it? But you know what I mean. Gulf of Florida. No, that's on the other side. But anyway, you know what I mean. The nice weather down that way. So there we have it. Explorer, done. Lovely. Ultra light and low, low and light. Okay, thank you for watching. And see you later in the week.